The information in this podcast is provided for education and research information only. It is not a substitute for professional health advice.
Welcome to The Kick, your expert-led podcast helping you explore and learn everything about getting pregnant, pregnancy, birth and becoming a parent.
On the podcast and our online pregnancy program, Grow My Baby, we share my experience of helping more than 4,000 babies to be born.
And our experience of running a women's health clinic and parenting 4 boys.
We're here to help everyone to feel empowered in pregnancy and birth with real-life practical information.
Welcome everyone, I'm Brigid Maloney and I am flying solo today. I've got a very exciting guest on. And when Pat and I talked about recording this episode, we decided that as much as the medical part of growing a baby can be overwhelming and confusing, for many, morphing into the new role as parent can be equally baffling. So it's me today with my parenting hat on. And that's what I told Dr. Pat, which is hilarious, particularly for a primary carer, because that hat never comes off. People commonly talk about work-life balance, but I think for the primary carer, there is only life. I know I'm not the only primary carer to say this, but I rarely switch off thinking about the next thing I need to do to manage or help someone in my family, even when I am knee-deep in work tasks. This is called the mental load. When our next guest came to our attention, we thought this would be really useful to help share tips on how to reduce part of that mental load, feeding you and your family. Justine Schofield will be known to many of you. She captured our attention as one of the very first contestants on MasterChef, and for the last 15 years has had her own show, Everyday Gourmet. Her passion is to help people to cook great food at home, and we're going to talk to her about some really practical tips on how to manage the mental load when it comes to cooking for yourself and your family. I think this will be great listening for anyone who's due to have their baby, for a postpartum mum who needs support and good nutrition for her recovery, and for anyone who is sleep deprived with a newborn and has Uber Eats on speed dial and want a cheaper and better way to eat. Let's get chatting with Justine. Welcome, Justine. So glad to have you here on the podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy to be chatting with you today.
And tell me, I want to start firstly with, where did your love of food come from?
It does come from many places, but like most cooks, it always does start on the maternal side. It starts with mum, and it starts with my maternal grandmother too. Having a French mother, food is just everything.
Yeah.
It's not just sustenance. Food is to be enjoyed. Food is to be shared. Food shows someone that you love them. And that was instilled in me from the get-go, from when I was a child. And I just loved watching mum take very basic ingredients and then transforming them into something beautiful and something super delicious. And I was always hungry as a kid. But I just loved eating, and I just loved watching her do her thing in the kitchen. And that goes for my maternal grandmother too, who was based in France, and whenever we had the opportunity, we'd be going over there. Mum would even send me over there by myself. And it felt like an extension of my mother, and everything that she'd cook. Obviously, my mum learnt from her mother. So I just remember those vivid memories of that happening as a child, with my grandma being in the kitchen with her long black curl just always constantly moving. As a very young child, I watched her maneuver around the kitchen with that. And this obviously must have been so fascinating for me as a child. But yeah, it was definitely watching them create something delicious with simple things.
Oh, I love that. And you're talking to someone who is the daughter of a caterer and publican. So yeah, I've always been around food, and we've got big families in our family. So, catering and producing massive meals, it's all part of our DNA, I think. Now, you mentioned that you have a toddler, Louis. Now, does he love food like you?
He does, thank God.
Oh, thank God. Good.
But as we know, toddlers change, and they can change like that. One day he hates fried rice, and at the moment he loves fried rice, which is great for me at the end of the week when I want to clear out the fridge.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a go-to.
He's really good. He is good, and for me it's so important for him to understand the love of food and have a great relationship with food, and sitting at the table and eating well together and slowly. We turn everything off. We don't have phones on the table, and we eat and we talk and we sit there for a while. I mean, as long as the toddler can, but he's actually really, really good. And I see him sometimes when we've got other friends coming over with their kids, and he sits there because he knows that's just what happens when we eat. We sit and we eat. That's what happens when we get to the table. We sit, we eat together, and once we're done, we leave. So I'm really happy that we're sort of sticking with that consistency.
In your book, which we'll get to talking about because it is brilliant, you said that you had a nesting phase before the birth of your son, which wasn't about getting the baby's room ready. It was about batch cooking. Where did that nesting need sort of come from, do you think?
Oh, I think every mum goes through it because I finished filming Everyday Gourmet mid-June, and then Louis was born. Oh, no, actually, what am I talking about? At the end of June. And then I had a month, 4 weeks to come back to the house, rip up carpet, put in cupboards. And then that's where I stopped and forgot about doing the rest of the child's room because it sort of turned to 4 weeks of getting food ready for me, selfishly. And it was just one of those things that was just super important to me to have there. And I just fell in love with the freezer. I cleared it out, I reset it, and I cooked food that I love, and I cooked food that I knew was going to nourish me, and food that I just never get sick of, and it was going to help me because, as all of my friends have told me, and all the advice is, when the baby's here, life changes. It certainly did, and it was so good to rely on the freezer for that, for sure.
Yeah, you call that the most underrated tool in the kitchen. I totally agree. I love my freezer.
I love my freezer, and I really love it. And if you use it to the best of its advantage, you actually get more out of it as possible. Yeah. And that comes to labeling and all sorts of things, but you can get so much more out of it than you really think. And not overwhelming yourself with just doing things all together and then getting it all straight in, just slowly replenishing it as you go. You certainly reap the rewards.
Yeah, and I really want to dig into that because I think you have a very systematic way of doing that. So if it's anything like my freezer, so we live in the country and all my farming friends give me weird cuts of meat because they really know I love to do a slow cook. But they're really awkward to put in a freezer and they take up a lot of room. So I want to know, how do you go about organising your freezer?
Yeah, unless you've got a deep freeze at the back, which you probably do if you're on a farm, and that's great because things will actually freeze for longer, and big chunks of meat with bone in it do last for a very long time in the freezer if they're stored correctly, as in the containers that you use is imperative. So like Ziploc bags, I know it's plastic, but they are so good in regards to stacking. I have actually a small freezer, so I've got to be really quite nifty in the way I put things in. So I use a lot of glass, a lot of jars too, and I use plastic Ziploc bags because even just a bolognese, just having it flat and sealing it off, you can actually stack them. You can stack more that way. Even liquids, you can do that. I even do some of my stocks in Ziploc bags, of course, cooling it down because I love homemade stocks. So nothing ever gets wasted, and you can actually see it's really easy to actually see what it is. And also if it's thin like that, you can actually defrost it so much faster.
Yep. I am a big fan of the glass lock containers as well. We have a lot of them, not so much plastic. But sometimes you still get a bit of freezer burn. Have you got any tips to well, firstly, I don't know whether the audience really kind of knows what freezer burn is. Can you describe that and what can you do to prevent it? And is it bad?
Is it bad? It's not really bad if it just starts, but it definitely burns. So it definitely changes the texture and the taste of what is on the surface. So, and it happens quite a lot, but the best thing is to less air as possible is going to be best. And that's why Ziploc bags are great. But in saying that, I really love glass too. And what I do is just put a bit of cling film or a bit of baking paper on the surface of the actual food and then put the lid on. And that gives you extra assurance that nothing will get that freezer burn. Yeah. Anytime that there's a little bit of air exposed there, so if you've wrapped your sausages very quickly and there's a little spot there, you will see that freezer burn. And of course, you want to cut that off before it just defrosts.
In your book, you do go through a really great chart on what to freeze, how to freeze different things and for how long. Do you have a basic rule of thumb that you have, how long we can store food for in a freezer? Because there's some things, again, these funny cuts of meat that my friends have given me, Some of them have been in there for like post 12 months. I think it's time for them to go in the bin, isn't it?
Well, the nose is a wonderful thing, okay, to smell. And I have to be careful. Obviously, I've written a book and safety is important. So we do have to follow the general rules. But as a cook that uses my senses also, sometimes you can tell. Now, when we're talking about a big chunk of meat that has been packaged correctly and stored correctly, like in a deep freeze, it actually can last for 12 months, dare I say. I might get into trouble saying that. But it generally can last a little longer, the bigger cuts. Now, mince and smaller cuts of meat, very different story. That's around the 3 to 9 month mark, depending, again, if it's been sealed correctly. And then things like the vegetables and fruits, they've got the 8 to 12 month mark to them because they're fruit and veggies. We're talking peas, carrots, all of those vegetables, they've got a very, very long shelf life, even longer sometimes. And then the breads and pastries, well, they've got a shorter life between the 1 and 6 months mark.
Are there any tips to thawing or defrosting? Because some things really, I don't have any luck freezing breads. I find that they do go a bit soggy afterwards.
Yeah, I freeze. So if it's a good sourdough or a baguette, I do freeze them.
Yeah.
But they will dry out immediately if they have not been packaged correctly. So I do wrap it in cling film or foil.
Yeah.
And then put it into a paper bag and then put it into the freezer, I should say. Defrosting is one of those things that you've just got to be prepared and forward think. So the best way to defrost is just putting it straight into the fridge and just leaving it overnight and then taking it out of the packaging and then reheating it how you like. But leaving it overnight, the slower the defrost, the better it's going to be, particularly with big chunks of meat for safe reasons. So even defrosting chunks of meat in the fridge is always going to be the safest option.
I'm not that organised and sometimes I want to thaw something super quick. Have you got any tips for thawing super quick?
There are safe ways of doing it. The humble microwave, if you know how to use your defrost button properly, it works a treat. It really does. So after doing this book, I've worked out my microwave so well that I can defrost quite easily in. And I only just I do a partial defrost because I don't like to do it in the packaging so much, in the storage container, I should say. I prefer to do it actually in the pot afterwards. So get it defrosted half to 3/4 of the way and then do the rest of the stovetop or in the oven. That's how I like to do it. And then can you leave it on the bench top? We highly recommend not.
Yeah.
In winter though, I do. You have to sort of be adaptable and understand when it's stinking hot, I'm not going to be defrosting something because what happens is the outside defrosts so fast, the inside's not. So then that's getting warm on the outside and then it's still freezing cold in the center. So you've just got to have that basic knowledge to know when and when not to do it. There are also those, there are some great ideas to put the food in the water. So if it's put in the right container and you can put it in not hot water, but cool water, it defrosts faster. But honestly, I don't even do that. I just go straight to the microwave to get the process starting, to just get it out of the container and then slowly reheat from there.
It sounds like you put a lot of sort of basics in your freezer, like your sofrito. Can you tell the audience what that is and what would you use that for?
The aim of this book was to do as many basics and stuff that people have seen before, but it's just to reiterate that, reinforce the importance of having those basics to have up your sleeve when you want to make a really quick meal and cutting corners where you can in a good way. So sofrito is essentially a fry up of, I call it the holy trinity of many, many dishes out there: carrot, onion, celery. Fry that off with garlic if you've got the garlic too. Frying a big batch of that off because let's face it, every time you want to do a bolognese or a stew, the three of them are usually the starter. And having that chopped and I don't say go out of your way to do it, but if you've got a bolognese coming up, if instead of doing 1 carrot, 1 piece of celery and an onion, do 4 onions. I know it sounds a lot, 4 onions, 4 carrots, 4 pieces of celery. Peel them, chop them finely. I do it in the food processor when I'm doing a big batch of that and fry it up. Batch the rest, use what you need, batch up the rest in the Ziploc bags in your last glass container, whatever you like. And then next time you do want that holy trinity, if you like, for your next for your next dish, then it's as simple as defrosting it, thawing it just a tiny bit, whacking it into the pot. It'll defrost there, and that's the beginning of a new dish. And you've just saved yourself 20 minutes, 15, depending how fast you can, peel and chop.
Yeah. I love peeling and chopping, and but I'm still not that fast at it. That would save so much time. And I'm just then assuming that you label and put the date on.
And how many times have you put something in the freezer and then 9 months later, what is this foreign object? It's frosty. There is just no label. And you swear to yourself when you put it in the freezer that day.
I'll remember.
I'll remember what that stew was. It was a beef bourguignon. And 9 months later, this brown frosty thing.
Yeah.
So, the sticky tape and my texter is sitting there ready to go every time to label and date, of course, date, because 9 months goes fast, 12 months goes fast. You're like, has that been in there for 9 months or has it been a year and a half? And if it has, fishes and must go in the bin.
Yeah, you talk about resetting and rotating in your freezer. So, man, you sound organised. I just aspire to be that organised. So you look at things and bring things to the front of the freezer and move it about.
Absolutely. And you'll do that with the dates. And I know it sounds a little bit OCD, but it's not. Like I don't overfill my freezer too where it just gets out of control and I was like, I really don't want to eat that. That's been there for 9 months and it's going to taste watery. It's things that I use on a regular basis that go in there, things that I need for Louis, things that I know that we always have. There is always a bolognese in the freezer because there are times when it's just quick, what's for dinner? And maybe I haven't defrosted it the night before, but the nifty microwave into a pot, boil the pasta, it's faster than any takeaway.
Yeah.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah.
And more nutritious. I want those nutritious dishes. I want the nutrients to be snap locked, and it does, and that's what the freezer does. And having that on standby is a wonderful thing. And even vegetables, sometimes you don't, we know about the carrot, I don't like frozen carrots.
Yeah. They're like spongy, yuck. Yeah.
Yeah, just watery, also broccoli. But I do love the peas, which is a no-brainer, and the corn, but spinach is a wonderful thing if you want to get that extra vegetable into any dish. Freezing a bag of spinach and then just throwing that into the chili con carne or the bolognese or anything really and folding it through, it's a really great vegetable to have in there. Of course, you can get the frozen versions too, but if you want to just throw in a bag, that's looking a little bit, I'm not going to eat all of this for the rest of the week. Have it in the freezer so you can just throw in an extra veg there.
You talk about having other basics like sauces and marinades, and what are your go-tos for those things?
Yeah, and there are it's a section that it wasn't meant to be a full section, to be honest, but then there just ended up being so many different things that I actually use a lot. There's a Japanese curry sauce in there that I just turn to all the time. I think the main thing is because Louis loves it. It's very mild. It's good old King's curry powder.
Yeah.
It's based on the Japanese curry, which has apple juice through it. You could also use orange juice. It's mild and it's super versatile. So it can be a base of a whole curry, or you can just drizzle it over some schnitzels. It's just a delicious sauce that you can go to over and over again. Stocks is just one of my main things that I have in my freezer because stocks are expensive. Good quality stocks are expensive on the market. So, if I've got a chicken carcass straight away, it goes straight in a couple of litres of stock and then into the freezer. Good old gravy. I'm a big believer in real gravy that's in there. And then there's things like compound butters, and I don't just use them a compound butter to put over a steak, which is just straight away you've got a flavour bomb right there. But compound butters can be as simple as just parsley, garlic, whip it in butter, roll it up, put it in the freezer. You want to make a quick garlic bread, that butter's there. Or you have a piece of fish that you want to just introduce some extra flavour. A knob of that butter just introduces a wonderful perfume to it. And I just love doing that too. And we respect that chicken gravy too. And then there's marinades, which I really wanted to not just do individually, but marinating things. So honey mustard fish fillets. Why not get some fresh salmon and then make honey? So I have a marinated fish that's not only going to keep marinating in the freezer, but it's ready to go. So the night before, bring out that marinated fish that's ready to be defrosted, cooking it, and it's got loads and loads of flavour. So having those meals ready to go will save you time in the long run.
And you also mentioned, and I'm a big fan, I have 4 boys. I'm not sure I mentioned that. So I've got 4 boys. And actually, when I knew I was going to be interviewing, I thought, how many meals have I cooked in my life? And I counted it all up. My eldest is 21 and it's 30,000 plus meals I've done for the family of 6. And I just am a big fan of buying in bulk. And I know what I like to buy in bulk, but what do you like to buy in bulk?
It's funny you say that. I went to Costco with my brother for the first time because I don't usually buy in bulk, but then I went there and there's that things are, oh yes, I use that a lot. So just those classic things. I used a lot of canned tuna. That gets bought in bulk because it's got a long shelf life. Pasta. We eat a lot of pasta. It's more cost effective to get a few of those. I also buy, interestingly enough, butter in bulk sometimes. When I find French butter, I buy French butter, and this is because my little new trip to Costco, because butter freezes really well to keep its freshness. So if you're looking for a specific butter, you can put a few blocks into the freezer. And I also buy, canned tomatoes is just something that I always have there for sure. What do you buy?
Oh, I buy exactly those things. I also buy some meat in bulk. And I also buy things like if I want to make sure that we're not spending $1 billion on meat, which is often what it feels like, I do cheaper cuts, like I said, with the sort of the slow cut meats, but also bulk drumsticks and things like that too. So, and I noticed that you've got a drumstick recipe in your book, which looks really great.
People keep tending to head towards chicken breast and chicken thighs, which are lovely, but chicken wings and drumsticks are just, for me, the darker cuts of meats like that taste so much better and are super versatile, and you get so much meat out of them, and the dishes taste nice. I mean, my stews always have chicken drumsticks in it. They're just the best.
Anyone listening might think, wow, I've now got to spend all weekend batch cooking. That's not your motto though, is it? Yours is cook once, eat twice.
Absolutely. I couldn't stress it enough. I think I maybe even put it in bold capital letters because I kind of felt daunted by the idea you see on social media. A lot of these people just cooking all weekend or Sunday. I'm wasting my precious Sunday cooking all day. I don't want to see food every weekend if I do that. Instead, I want people to see it as cook for the opportunity. If I'm cooking a bolognese one night, instead of put 500 grams, put a kilo, or instead of 1 kilo, put 2 kilos. You're making it anyway. It may take an extra 15 to 20 minutes because you have a few more vegetables to chop. But if you've got a big pot, do it because you're going to have a portion for that night, maybe some leftovers the next day. Then a few containers in the freezer is going to save you time. So I might do that once a week, and then the week after maybe nothing because I was not cooking anything that was freezer friendly. And then the week after I was doing a beef bourguignon, so, beef stew, then that's when I'll take the opportunity to do another 2 kilos of meat there. So you're not stressed and feel like, oh, I've got to do all this stuff for the week. It's doing it over time.
Yeah.
That will actually save you, and you will just be so much organized for it without much effort, without extra effort.
Do you spend a lot of time planning what you might eat for that week? It'd be hard. You'd be off on location shooting and stuff. I don't know how you managed to even plan that.
That's where the freezer came in. I remember Louis was 5 months old and I was on my way to Malaysia, and the mother guilt was just horrendous. And I just felt so horrible to leave him. He actually, by the time I left, he was just on 6 months. So I just spent 4 to 6 weeks pumping and getting that in the freezer and making his purees and weaning him onto the purees. And it was just, the freezer really, really became my best friend then, because knowing that he had all this beautiful food ready for him and it wasn't going to stress my partner or anything, it was just all ready to go, was something that was important for me, to have the control that Louis was going to get all the milk from me, just as fresh, defrosted from the freezer, and great food was just a massive thing for me. And then doing the fly out from Melbourne, that's where I filmed the show. having the freezer stocked. So all his favourite dishes are in there. Makes me feel a little bit better as a mum. You know, the guilt of leaving him is just so big and that's a whole new episode. but having that there is just some calmness to it, for sure.
A lot of our listeners do have toddlers. You know, they might be listening again because they're pregnant again, but, you know, they've got 1 or 2 babies already or children already. Louis is a toddler now. Getting onto solids, what sort of food does he go nuts for? What are you going, yep, we're on a winner? You mentioned fried rice just before, how he went on and off fried rice, but any others that you sort of thought that's a winner?
Yeah, lots of, isn't it funny? Some kids just like holding things and crunchy thing. Louis more of he likes soft textures. He's very much into the risottos, roasted pumpkins. Don't get me started on pasta, lasagna, meatballs, all the soft textures. One thing I must admit, he doesn't love big chunks of meat yet. So apart from sausages, but just won't have a lamb cutlet. And that's fine. That's fine. If that's not what he wants, that is fine. I will sometimes, well, not sometimes, I always just have it there ready to go for him to just taste. He's just slowly getting into it. So what is some of it? I mean, the pasta's I just can't say anything else. Any type of pasta, he is absolutely into. Yeah. Like even if he's hungry, he has a second belly for that. He's also massive into compots of all things. He's still got this real baby palate going on. And I love that because I just put loads of fruit into that and a very the tiniest amount of sugar, if so any. And we call it dessert every night, but it is natural yogurt and a little bit of compote in there. And he loves it, absolutely. And I think that's how I was brought up too, you know, strawberry and pear compote, or just an apple compote, peach compote. There are so many different things. And in my book, there's a whole chapter on babies' first purees, and it's all the ones that Louis like. You know, he just loved zucchini and carrot and spinach and sweet potato, pear and vanilla, and really giving them a variety. Yeah. And it's just, yes, you can buy them out on the market, but nothing compares to making it yourself and trying it yourself and changing it to see what they like or what they don't like. Yeah. Polenta is a massive thing that I want mums and dads to get onto because it's so easy to make. It just takes moments to make. And it's a fantastic side if you're sick of eating rice all the time or pasta. Polenta's a really lovely side to a bolognese or any stew really, or grilled meats.
Yeah, and you're mixing up the grains and you're introducing new things. I remember my eldest was quite fussy, but that's because he did have a bit of tummy upset. So an older friend told me just keep introducing food all the time. So you just keep, even if they're not eating it, you're putting it on their plate. They just know that one day I might try that. And that's exactly what all 4 boys do now. They eat everything. None of them are fussy. They will eat everything that's on a plate, which I'm so grateful of because they're very hungry now.
Yeah, and it's sometimes you feel like you have to be persistent with it. And even sometimes I don't feel like that being, but having it on the plate really, well, you're going to eat it because you don't want to waste the food. And if it's there, they eventually will try it. And I watch other children, my friends' children, and how the other parents, how they create the dinners or the lunches, whatever it is. And the ones that are really good eaters are the ones that from beginning, even if they didn't like it, still had a gorgeous rainbow on their plate because they just get used to it. And some days they're hungrier than others, so they actually will try it that day.
Yeah, and it's not that we ever would force a child to sit at the table until that plate was clean or anything like that. You know, if they didn't eat it, that was okay. There was no power struggle around that. It's just like, okay, maybe next time.
Exactly.
What I love too, because we're so into smoothies at the moment at our house, you've got a section on smoothie packs. This idea is genius. I'm going to do it.
I thought everyone was already doing it. So I'm like, we'll just reinforce it. But yeah.
No, I have the individual packs of the fruit. But we buy like frozen berries or frozen mangoes, which mango loses its flavour, unfortunately. But I have that, and yet it still seems to waste. Like you still get bits of wasted fruit or whatever. So I think having it pre-done in a smoothie pack's a great idea.
Yeah, and for me that came about, I was just down in Melbourne and having to get out the door by 6, and I just wanted to get big chunk of fruit and veggie into my diet before we start filming and not snack because, you know, filming with food, you're constantly eating, which is a struggle with that. But having a nice healthy smoothie, and all I had to do, I bring my mix down, my blender, and then it's just putting it in there with some milk or yogurt, and it's done within seconds. And if you really be creative with it, I mean, there's no reason why you can't freeze your oats in there and some chia seeds and changing up. And if I've got a big bunch of mint and I don't use it all, okay, well, I'll use that in one of the packs to put in. And it's also a really great opportunity when you've got fruit that's almost too ripe and you're seeing it in your fruit bowl. Don't throw it in the bin, chop it up into a container ready to go for a smoothie and make the creative combo. And you also see, when you think about all those places that you get frozen smoothies or all the smoothie shops that are out there, they're making a killing. What do? They've got everything frozen, ready to go.
And then they just put it all in. Yeah.
Why can't we do it at home?
Yeah, and plus lots of juice. I keep saying this to the kids, you know, that's full of just apple juice. The one that they just chose is full of apple juice. We could go home and make this pretty much from scratch. Yeah.
Exactly.
And the smoothie packs is a great idea for a mum or, you know, parents that have just bought a newborn home and they're just struggling to make any sort of food. Although they're not now because they've got your book and they've planned it all and they've got a freezer full of really nutritious food. But, you know, sometimes smoothie packs
start nesting nesting with the food a couple of months in advance. You will be so happy when bubble comes. But, you know, Louis loves smoothies too when he wakes up from his nap and he's not starving, but he needs his afternoon tea. Yeah. And instead of crackers all the time and having a nice cold smoothie is just lovely to have, and it fills them up with a few little oats, keeps them going until dinner time.
In your book, you talk about a lovely friend, I think her name was Amy, who makes all your friends the postpartum snack ball snack. No, that's bad.
Yeah. What I used to call them, they're actually, between our friends, it's called Amy's breastfeeding balls. My publisher was like, maybe we should change that name. I'm like, it's Amy's breastfeeding balls. And they are, because they're just full of the goodies that you need when you are breastfeeding. It keeps you full. It's nutritious. It's great for milk productions. And it was just a beautiful little tradition that she's created with our best mates. We've known each other since we were in year 7, so 12, 13 years of age. We're now 40 almost. But it's just one of those things like, oh, Amy, I've had the baby coming over.
Yeah. I haven't got your breastfeeding balls yet.
Yeah, and she makes so many and they actually freeze really well. Yeah. And if you want to take them in the lunchbox, you pop them in the lunchbox for those going to work. And even, if you want to make some nut-free ones, you can for the kiddos, and putting them in the lunchbox. By lunch, they're just at the perfect temperature and they're really delicious. They're addictive for sure.
I know that we've been focusing on everyday foods, and I think you've got sort of 90 recipes or something about everyday foods. But one of the last questions I want to ask is, I imagine that when you invite people over for dinner, there's a lot of pressure on you to produce something that's delicious. What is your go-to dish that you would choose?
I can't take credit for this dish, but Matt Moran, who's a good friend of mine, when he has a dinner or lunch at he used to, and he did this a few times, a side of very good quality king salmon with marmalade and miso over the top. Now, it is the most basic dish you could make, and it's clever cooking for the masses. And I have to mention it because I do it for all my friends, and I've actually got to be careful not to do it too much now because I overdo it. But it's just so easy to prepare. A side of salmon, if you're doing it for, 4 to 6, 8, 10, you can cook this. It is 3 ingredients: the salmon, miso, and marmalade. And it's that contrast of salty miso with really sweet orangey marmalade. Mix it together, nothing else required. Smear it over the side of salmon under the grill, not in the oven. So you preheat your grill element in the oven. Pop that under for less than 8 minutes until it's caramelized on top. It's a forgiving dish. I mean, you can't overcook it. You can't burn, well, you can if you leave it obviously for too long, but it really takes 8 to 10 minutes. And you can serve it room temperature, hot, with some science salads. It is a delight, and it's a genius dish because everyone loves, unless you don't like salmon, but everyone loves that dish. And you can do it with other sides of, kingfish. I've done it with kingfish, sensational. And it's great that you can actually find sides of fish now that's readily available. If not, you can do it just with fillets.
Yeah.
But a beautiful dish that is not labor intensive. And I've learned a lot off Matty Moran. We'll give you, he's just a wonderful chef, obviously, and restaurateur. But when you just see how people have chefs run a dinner party so well, you're like, I'm going to take all my tips and tricks from him. And it is. And I watch how he does his dinner parties. And a lot of it is everything is done because he's relaxing and enjoying his time too with his guests. And I have taken that and I do it too. I have my salads ready to go. I have my sides ready to go. I have, even the fish ready to go. You can even put it on the barbecue and there's nothing else to do. Cheese boards ready. Everything is ready. Table set. So, because there's nothing worse than people come over and you're just all over the place. It's stressful. It's stressful for your guests to see you.
Or you give up on entertaining altogether. So that's not only have you talked about, how to make the mental load of planning and making sure that you've got nutritious food during the week by having your freezer stacked. Love it. Now you've given people a tip on how they can still have a social life.
Exactly. Because I love socializing, but I don't like when I feel like I'm running around and not even listening to anybody because I'm, I got to get that out of it. Food, when you come to my house, it's never going to be super fancy. It's just delicious. And it's pre-done by myself, of course, but just ready to go so you have control.
I did have a question. I missed it. I do need you to answer it, though. It is often an easy meal where you might reach for frozen nuggets or fish fingers or something like that. I've seen it before. How could this be swapped out for something that's homemade but still convenient?
Yeah, absolutely. In my book, I have fish fingers and nuggets. I have shown to show people how to make it from scratch because we know all kids, you go in every menu, there's fish fingers or fish and chips and nuggets. That's what the kids love, right? But bring it to your home and cook it well and freeze it in a big batch, ready to go. And you can give your child that. And also, more importantly, not just your child, the whole family can have lovely nuggets and have lovely fish, good quality fish that you have crumbed yourself because it does freeze really well. And even when I was researching this book, I did go to a lot of, the bistros and the RSLs and then also just roam the supermarkets to see what is actually frozen and how can I do it at home and without too much fuss, so you're not spending all weekend doing it. And having it there ready to go. And I must say, my chicken nuggets are so good because I put them in a batter.
Nice.
And a few little processes, but on a rainy day, please, everybody make them. They are so good. You can air fry them. You can put them in the oven. You can even fry them in a pan if you like. But they're better than any chicken nugget you'll get on the market.
Yeah.
Hands down, worth the time to do it.
Yeah. And when you're out and your kids order chicken nuggets, I don't know whether I ruin their dinner for them, but I often get them to, it's quiz time. And I say to them, kids, do you think any chicken went into that chicken nugget? Because it doesn't even look like chicken. I don't know what they put in chicken nuggets, but there you go.
Lots of filler and it's just, I don't even want to talk about it because it is annoying when there's not much choice out there. I always end up getting Louis the pasta because, I want him to have something a little bit more nutritious than and the unknown, the scary unknown, what is actually in it. Of course, sometimes that happens, but we're all human.
And Justine, I've got to ask, last location shoot you went to France. Can you tell me about that? Because that looked amazing.
Oh, it has been a dream of mine for like 15 years. And my director, every year I said, where are we going this year? And please just make sure it's France because the obvious connection there. And no, not this year, not this year. So I just remember what he said. We are going to France and we're going to Burgundy and we to the Dordogne region. And for me, it was just like, wow, I've really hit career top of the top because to be able to film where my mother comes from, where it's my heritage. And it was just a wonderful experience. The food, the wine, I just love it so much. And if you have seen the series, you'll see how passionate I am about it and how much weight I put on because we ate a lot of cheese, drank wine. And it was just spectacular. And I just loved every minute of it. We just met some incredible chefs and home cooks. And I got to cook the food that I was brought up with. And it was just so lovely to just really show everyone where my true passion lies when it comes to cooking, and that's French food.
Oh, how amazing. And you were in an 800-year-old kitchen or something at one stage. Like the history, that must be incredible.
Oh,
yeah.
The smells, the history, it is just one of the most beautiful places in the world for sure.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing your time with us and coming onto the podcast to share your tips. We've covered so much gold here today, but I think everybody needs the visual. I think you need to go out and buy the book. Hopefully someone will listen to this and get it as a gift for you, but if not, just go out and buy your own gift. The book's called Cook Ahead, isn't it?
Correct. And it's one of those books that is just going to sit on in your kitchen, and you will refer to it time and time again. It's not just a pretty book, it's an actual useful book. And that was my aim this time.
Yep, it really is useful. Yeah. And I would say that's coming from a seasoned family cook. It's a really useful book. Mm.
Now, what you need to do is go and get that piece of chunk of meat that's in the bottom of your freezer and assess it and see if it is cookable.
And say, yeah, what would Justine say?
Page 195.
Yeah, lovely.
I've got something for you there.
Good. Thanks, Justine, for all your time. It was really great to chat.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you really enjoyed my chat with Justine. I think she's just such a great, genuine, easygoing person that has some really good tips for families that are starting this journey of what is it that I'm going to feed my kids for dinner tonight. So I'll put the link to her book in our show notes. So just have a look there if you're interested in following up on that. All right. Hope you have a great week, and bye for now.